sight. Are you ready for the ride of your life?
Hello, welcome to Toe to Toe Extra. Look who's here in the studio. It's none other than Gary Logan. It is the 4th of July. It is Independence Day. So we thought we'd ask Gary who his top 5 all-time American fighters are. Gary, over to you. Have you had some time to think about this?
Mm-hmm.
You have.
Yeah.
Interesting. Go on then. Give us your top 5.
Can't please all the people all the time. So these are my number 5 coming in will be Floyd Mayweather. I think that Floyd certainly as a lightweight and a super lightweight goes down as one of the best in history. I really do believe that. I think he belongs in a conversation with the Durans, the Benny Leonards, all of those guys, all of those top guys that we mention at the top of the lightweight in history. Yeah, and at super lightweight, he was pretty much even more of a handful at super lightweight. I think that was his optimum weight, which makes his performances at welterweight even more amazing because his hands were busted up by the time he was fighting the likes of Cotto and even Hatton and that, and he was just he was very good then. But I think he was especially special as a lightweight and super lightweight in history. So I would put him up there.
Okay.
And you can't mess with an undefeated record. Number 4 is Marvin Hagler, Mike, the great marvelous one, world middleweight champion from 1980 until dethroned by Sugar Ray Leonard in 1987. And what years they were, fought everybody and anybody on the way up, and just was at his motto was destruct and destroy. He always backed up what he said. I think the world's, God bless his soul, the world's a lot less a better place for not having a Marvin Hagler in it. I just think his performances against... Everybody talks about the Tommy Hearns war, but I think the performances against Tony Simpson was special that night. He was absolutely punch perfect against Tony Simpson. And the actual Alan Minter win, the way that he took apart a guy that had won every other title in the game up until that point. Alan had won the British, European, Commonwealth. He was a dominant middleweight, and Marvin just absolutely ripped the title away from him and gave us some highlight reel knockouts in his reign.
Number 3.
Number 3. Sugar Ray Leonard, Olympic champion, undisputed welterweight champion, super welterweight champion.
This list hasn't taken
the list
put together,
just
is it, really?
It's just too long.
Yeah.
Probably my chief inspiration for having boxed is Sugar Ray Leonard. I just thought everything about him was wonderful. But I remember the late Reg Gutteridge always said about it, the secret behind Leonard's fighting was that he could take a great punch. And the fact is, as I said to you earlier, when great champions, they're willing for you to punch at them so they can counter. And that's what they did. And when he boxed Tommy Hearns in 1981, he was getting beat out of sight for 5.5 rounds. And he actually hurt Tommy with a great counter shot.
Yeah.
So that when you hurt someone with a counter shot, you're expecting them to punch at you. And Tommy Hearns at that time, I personally think not many welterweights in history beat that Tommy Hearns that night. And Leonard did. Sucked it up, stopped him in the 14th round. But it all started in the 6th round when he just turned it around. And that was special. Even more special was the fact that he then, he had the Kevin Howard, he got the detached retina, had the Kevin Howard fight, came back in 84, didn't look great in his opinion, retired immediately. And then he's sitting there ringside watching Hagler go to war against John Mugabe, and he says to Michael J. Fox and Rob Lowe, I can beat him. And they're like, shut up. And he announces his comeback, and he shocks us all because I mean when Marvin got on the scales for the weigh-in, I was in fear of Leonard's life. I just thought Marvin just looked like, unbelievable. So for him to do what he did, and to do it over his career, he beat Roberto Duran twice. And the first fight with Duran was one of history's greatest fights, let alone welterweight fights. So
Coming in at number 2.
Number 2 has to be Muhammad Ali.
He's your number 2?
Yeah,
Okay.
he's my number 2. But number 1 will make sense.
Okay.
Number 1 will make sense. But number 2 is Muhammad Ali. What can we say about him? I went to...
Sells itself, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sells itself. When I went to the exhibition years ago at the O2, it just leaves you in tears. You know, what this man accomplished both in and out the ring. The fact that he was a politician when nobody knew about it. Civil rights leader, even when he didn't want to be.
bigger than boxing.
He was just bigger than boxing. At one point in the 70s, they said only 3 men were more known in the world than him. And one of them was the president of Russia. The other one was Jimmy Carter, president of the United States. And the other one was the late Elvis Presley. Those are the only people that were known more than him. And that would only be marginal. He was just amazing. The fact that he won the world title in 64 against Sonny Liston, who goes down again as many people in their great top 10s, Sonny Liston, destroyed him, beats him again in return. And then he gets his career ripped away from him at his peak. He was ripped away from him by the US government, comes back in 1970, and then to win the world title, he's got to fight arguably history's most damaging heavyweight puncher of all time, George Foreman. He's got to fight him just to win it back. And the fact is that he did that. And let's not forget the Fraser fights, the Norton fights, all these men that Foreman destroyed, and now he goes and destroys Foreman. Words can't. There's not enough words to express what he means to both boxing and in world history. There's just not enough.
Greatest of all time. Number one.
Has to be Sugar Ray Robinson. The fact that he won the middleweight title so many times, but he was probably in his prime as a welterweight, and he nearly won the light heavyweight title. If he only managed to stay on his feet against Joey Maxim, he then would have been a freeweight champion in an era where there was only 8 weights. So there was no bobbing and wave. There wasn't going up from junior lightweight to lightweight. If you couldn't make lightweight, you did welterweight. It was simple as that. And the fact that he would have won that he was winning that fight. But as a welterweight, his record is incredible. He beat, I think, 10 guys that would go on to be world champions at welterweight. He had 73 wins, 1 defeat, and 1 draw. And the 1 defeat was Jake LaMotta, who would be world middleweight champion. So that was him at welterweight. So he was welterweight and middleweight champion. And you watch the videos and you think, oh, well, would he have belonged in this era? He would have belonged in any era. He was that good. His combination punching, his left hook is as good as any in history, taught the right way.
That is some, isn't it?
Some record, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for that. Don't forget, leave your comments in the bottom of who you think is your greatest of all time, top 5. I can imagine someone that was with us on Saturday, Clarissa Shields, might have something to say. She'd be like, where am I in that list?
Unfortunately, Clarissa, you just don't have the opponent level. That's the only problem with Clarissa. She's just so far ahead that, for me, she beat Savannah 8-4, 8 rounds to 4. So that tells me you're quite ahead of your opponent.
She'd have something to say about that.
You know what I mean? And rightfully so. She has to back herself. But she hasn't had the opponent level that these guys had in their era. She just hasn't had it. I mean, Mayweather's opponent level alone over the years that he's boxed is immense. Don't get me wrong, there's a couple of men that he dropped out that he kind of like bypassed. And the only problem with Mayweather that I do have, he was never an undisputed champion.
Yeah.
So that tells me somebody got avoided, so.
Thank you, Gary.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we want you to get involved. Leave your comments below and we shall see you next week.
Sky Sports. Feel it all.